A new poll by the Wall Street Journal and NORC University, NORC and the University of Chicago, I should say, finds that most Americans not happy with the economy, which shouldn't be surprising, but just talk to the Biden administration because they think that they've done a stupendous job with the economy. They've created so many jobs. Everything is so great, except it's not. So let's get to the details because it is important to know that the survey was conducted before the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. And so I would venture to say that if it happened after the collapse, the results would even be more pronounced. But here's what we know. The survey found that 78% of Americans said that they do not feel confident that their children will have better lives than they did. That's actually the highest percentage ever recorded since the survey started asking that very question in 1990. So that is what you're seeing in that graph. There's a steep decline in the number of, or the percentage of Americans who feel that their children will do better than they did economically.
And none of them are in power. The people in power, if you ask them, I bet you if you did the same exact poll, over 90% would say, oh, things are getting better. I bet my kids have a better life than me. Oh my God, things are great, right? And so they see polls like that and they don't believe it. They think, what do you mean? We all love Biden. Biden's doing such a fantastic job. The whole country. I swear to God, I have these conversations. I have them with people in DC, I have them with my friends. They think Biden's killing it and that the whole country loves him.
I would say his NLRB is pretty good, right? When it comes to protecting labor as they're trying to organize, the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board under Biden has been excellent. I'll give him credit for that, but that's where it pretty much stops. Overall, Americans are unhappy with the state of the economy. So let's take a look at the next graph and I'll explain what's happening here. 80% of Americans said that the economy is poor or not so good. Only 20% described the economy as excellent or good. The poll found some specific answers about why Americans are so depressed about the economy. So let's get to what I would hope the federal government would see as predictable answers, but something tells me they wouldn't. Now, roughly 4 in 10 cited healthcare and housing costs as big worries, and nearly 2/3 said inflation is a major concern. But if you're an ordinary American wage earner, ordinary American worker, don't worry because we have the Federal Reserve specifically stating that they're raising interest rates to increase unemployment to bring down inflation. So you might lose your job, and I'm sure things will be great then, right?
But look, there are facts in Biden's favor, and I say, hey, he should trumpet those more, which he doesn't because he sucks at politics. And again, all the establishment folks are like, what do you mean he beat Donald Trump? Donald Trump has an IQ of like 14. And they're like, he barely beat him. He beat him by 43,000 votes in 3 swing states. And they're like, how did you know he was able to beat someone who's mentally challenged by this much? Wow, you guys must be so proud. Your last candidate lost to that guy, by the way. Anyways, in this case, he does have record employment numbers, right? So that's true. But wait a minute, there's a disconnect here. If we have record high employment, why are people dissatisfied with the economy? And that's where like the media and everybody in Washington, they can't figure it out. They can't figure it out. It's like the biggest mystery in the world to them. Here, I'll solve it for you, super easy. Low wages, lack of health care, and no social safety net.
Lack of full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Let's also keep it real. Like it's not good enough to say we created jobs. Okay, what's the quality of those jobs? Are they full-time jobs? What do they pay? What kind of benefits are included? There's never any analysis in that. I wonder why. I wonder why they don't talk about the quality of those jobs. But that is the issue here. In fact, that actually goes into the other data point from this poll. So more than half of the respondents said that it wouldn't be easy to find another job with comparable pay and benefits. That was the highest level since 2010, according to the NORC's General Social Survey.
Yeah, look, literally on cable news, not just on Fox News, MSNBC and CNN, they were all complaining for about a year straight that wages were too high.
Yep, yeah.
And they were saying that was causing inflation. By the way, economists showed beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was not the wages. That wages were a tiny, tiny percentage of what was causing inflation. There was many other factors that were much larger having to do with corporate greed, right?
Corporate greed, supply chain issues.
Yes,
yeah.
That's right. And not
Federal
just
Reserve pumping money into corporations and banks.
Of course. So, but that's never mentioned on cable news. And they're like, look, the people in power in DC are as detached from reality as almost anyone in the country, including the MAGA guys, etc. Okay, so they think the problem is that average Americans getting paid too much. They think the minimum wage shouldn't go up. You know what the federal minimum wage is? $7.25. You make $15,000 a year if you don't take a single day off and you work every, weekday. You make $15,000 a year, and they think, nope, nailed it. It shouldn't go up at all. The problem is wages are too high. No, 78% of people are dissatisfied and worried about the future because the wages are too low. These people are deranged. They're blinded by their wealth and power and privilege, and they just can't understand why people aren't as happy as they are. Because they're not as rich as you are. It's not that difficult to figure it out, but no one in DC can figure it out. They're flummoxed by it.
This next data point, it just really resonates. And I think a lot of Americans feel this way, possibly a higher percentage than what is reflected in this poll, but a plurality of the respondents, 44%, said their finances are in worse condition than they expected for this stage in life. And more than a third said they are not at all satisfied with how they are getting along financially. Fewer than 3 in 10 agreed that people like them and their family have a good chance of improving their standard of living. Like the lack of hope, for me at least, really resonates, right? Just not feeling like there's anything to look forward to, not feeling as if anything is gonna get any better in the country. I think that's just a widespread sentiment that Americans across the political aisle are feeling right now.
Look, every poll shows that 70 to 80% of Americans are dissatisfied with their standard of living and what they think is ahead for them in the future and for their kids. And everyone in power goes, yep, we nailed it. So you can't look, man, sometimes Democrats are crazier than Republicans. You tell this stuff to a Democrat and they go, nope, don't believe it. Nope, nope, nope.
Well, okay, so let's talk about why that is, right? Because I think that the Democratic Party has its own problems electorally. And I think one of the biggest flaws for the Democratic Party is that it went from being the party that represents the best interests of workers, namely blue collar workers, right? That's the party of FDR. It has now transitioned to the party that represents the highly educated white collar workers, right? And so highly educated white collar workers who didn't lose their jobs during the pandemic, who are still gainfully employed.
They're in that 3 out of 10 that are satisfied.
They think everything's great because they're not seeing past their own lived experience, right? So
Which is the most common mistake in humanity.
Right, so when they hear from people like us, they're like, what is wrong with them, right?
They do, they think we're radical, crazy people.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, I did this, 70% of Americans are dissatisfied with the economy, ridiculous. Everyone at the club is perfectly satisfied, and they genuinely believe it. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.